Greetings, fellow YouTubers. This is the Budget Army channel, yet another exciting video for your viewing pleasure. Well, this is where I start my series of reloading videos. And I've already gone through the process a few times with a 9mm and 40, just so I could get used to it, and so I was sure not to tell you anything incorrect, so you know, you wouldn't blow yourself up for anything, because that would be kind of a downer, I would say. But we're going to start this from the beginning and go all the way to the end, and at the end I'm going to include a cost analysis. So your costs will differ, of course, depending on what area you're in, what you buy your components for, but I'm going to base everything on what I bought my components for. And you know, that'll give you an idea, probably a ballpark, a fairly good ballpark, because we're talking pennies here, of what it'll cost and what savings, if any, that you'll have. Okay, so let's start with the equipment that you're going to need. First thing you're going to need, of course, are primers, or components. Let's start with the primers. These are large pistol primers because we're going to be loading 45 ACP today. Okay, and I've got the CCI number 300. There's 100 of them in that packet right there. We'll load either 50 or 145 ACP, so we may go through that entire thing. The next thing you need, of course, is going to be powder. Now, today I'm using Alliance Unique. It's pretty much an all-around smokeless pistol powder. I also have Power Pistol, also from Alliance, but from what I understand, Unique may be better suited for 45 ACP. Now, of course, you're going to need brass. Most of you will probably pick up your range brass, or just somebody else's range brass, I guess, if they don't mind. This is all nickel-plated brass that I purchased, $15 for, I think, 300 pieces. Because, I mean, I have range brass that I've been collecting for years, and I think I may have, maybe 150 or so. So I can base it on both, with range brass or reused brass and brass that I purchased. It's not new brass. This is once fired, or you know, once fired range brass, but I wanted to go with the nickel plated. Of course, you're going to need 45 ACP bullets. These are just 230 grain full metal jacket. I bought 300 of them for about $40, a little over $40, from Georgia Arms, and the diameter is .451. At least it should be. I haven't measured them yet. So obviously you're going to need a projectile, otherwise you'll just be shooting blanks. You'll need a set of reloading dies. Now these are the Lee Deluxe pistol set dies for 45 ACP and 45 auto rim. Now what the Deluxe is that includes, let me see if I turn that around this way. Here we go, the carbide factory crimp die, and that's the last thing in the process. So they say that if you have the factory crimp die, you don't need to trim your cases. I will measure them to make sure they're within overall length allowances. You will need a priming tool. In this case, I'm using the Lee Auto Prime, and I'll show you how to put that together. It's a hand priming tool, and it's really neat. It works extremely well. This is the older model, and I'll explain the difference between the older model and the newer model. And of course, you're going to need a press. This is just a single stage C-frame press by Lee. Very inexpensive, but very, very effective. Works extremely well. Of course, you're going to need a reloading manual, so that's kind of like your recipe book, so you don't overcharge your cases, or I guess undercharge your cases as well. And I'll show you exactly how that works. And you'll need a scale. I've got the Hornady electronic scale. It's the GS 1500, and it's got that little, it's got the pan in there. One thing I don't have, I wish I did have, was a powder funnel. And of course, you're going to need a shell holder. That was that little $5 shell holder I got at the gun show a little while ago. And you also will need a set of calipers so you can measure the different dimensions of your round after you've made them, so to make sure they're within specifications. So in a nutshell, this is what you need. There's going to be a couple other non-standard tools that I'll be using as well to go through the process. So I'll explain those as I go along. They're nothing else is specialized. I don't think so. Oh, your powder measure also. I don't have that out yet, but I'll be using the Lee Autodisc powder measure to charge our cases. So let's go ahead and get started with stage one. Now the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to decap, and we're also going to have to resize the cases, because whenever you fire a shell or a bullet, your ammunition through your pistol, whether it's a revolver or an auto pistol, the brass will expand. Because of course there's a lot of gas and pressure being exuded from the explosion. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to size it back down, because if you tried to stick that case into your chamber now, it would probably not make it. Probably be too big and would get stuck in the process. So resizing is the first step. So it's very simple. From your die set, you want to take out your carbide sizing die. Now the carbide, it's a type of metal that does not require you to use case lube. So this is what it looks like. You'll know it immediately from the stem, and that's the decapping stem right there. And the way you use it is you take your shell holder, which should be included in your die set, you stick it into the press and you run the ram all the way up. Then you take your die and you just run it down until it touches the top of the ram. Once it does that, take your locking collar and you tighten it down so that die won't move at all. So then from there, you're going to take your brass, move all this stuff out of the way, and you're going to start sizing. Very simply, put it in the shell holder, run it up through, it decaps and resizes, and that's it. There you go. And 50. Alright, I've got 50 resized and decapped brass. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure them to make sure that they're within overall max length specifications. Now, according to my reloading manual, the maximum length of the case should be no longer than 0.898 inches. So as long as we're within those specs, I won't need to trim. So let's go ahead and start measuring them. My calipers, turn them on, zero them out. 0.892, so I am well within the 0.898 maximum. So I'm going to go ahead and 0.889, 0.895. It's going to be pretty close. 0.892 or 0.898 is our max. 0.895, 0.891. Alright, that's all of them. About every 10 rounds or so I'd recalibrate my calipers to make sure that they were relatively close to zero. So none of them were longer than the maximum case length, so I'm going to go ahead and use all pieces of these brass, and then we'll go on to the next step. Alrighty then, the next step is kind of one of the more tedious steps I've discovered, and that is cleaning out the primer pockets. Now, there is a tool. RCBS makes one, I believe Hornady makes one, and probably most everybody makes a primer pocket cleaning tool of some sort, and that's because you want to get, see if I can find one that I haven't already done. I don't know if you can see that, but you want to get the gunk out of the primer pocket so that you're sure that the primer will seat properly. Now, I didn't get a primer pocket cleaning tool because, not that I didn't want one, because I couldn't find one. Last several gun shows, nobody had them. So, actually, I was viewing some videos by Ammosmith.com on his channel, and he's got a specialized tool that I happen to have that will work just as well to clean out your primer pockets, and that's this. With these little itty-bitty screwdrivers. And all you do is run it through. You don't use a lot of pressure. Just clean out. You just want to make sure you get the bad gunk out, and you want to make sure that the edges are clean so the primer will seat, and then there you go. So there is an example of a dirty primer pocket. Focus, 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 focus for me. And then you just take your little specialized tool, run it through a few times, take a look, make sure you're getting all the good stuff out. Like I said, don't need a lot of pressure, but you want to make sure that you're getting into the edges. This was a really dirty primer pocket. And there you go, there's a difference. So it's not that you want it perfectly clean, but you do want to make sure that your primer will seat fully. So there's another example of a fairly. These are actually pretty clean. I guess the nickel plating does help in not allowing the powder to stick as much. Now, there's a really dirty one right there. I think the Winchesters ending up being the dirtiest, and that's what most of these brass pieces are, is Winchester. There we go. Another really dirty Winchester one. There we go. So I'll go ahead and finish these. I won't bore you with watching me clean out primer pockets for the next 10 or so minutes. Probably not even that long, but alright, let's go ahead and transition here. Come on, camera. Oh wait, that's right, I gotta push the stop button. Sorry about that. Now, one thing I'm noticing is how much dirtier the Winchester brass is to everything else. Now remember, you're not trying to add a lot of pressure because you're not trying to rip a new one in it. You're just wanting to clean the stuff out. Now there's a Remington Peterson. Actually, the Remington's been pretty clean. This is the first really dirty Remington I've come across. I mean, it's like the Winchesters. And it's funny because most of these brasses most of the brass here is Winchester. So it's taken me a little while longer than I would have anticipated. But see, there's a Federal. And, you know, Federal and Speer are the same company. So there's not much I have to do that at all. Yeah, that's done. There's a Winchester. See how much dirtier that is? Okay, that Federal. The Federal and the Speer actually were very, very clean. Very little had to be done, and it actually cleaned that primer pocket out. Like I said, I'm not, you know, really forcing it in there. I'm basically just making some light contact and cleaning out the residue. There's one last Winchester right there. And making sure I got the around the base there. So make sure that primer seats. Okay, 50 clean primer pockets. So once we've gotten to this point, we want to go ahead and prime the cases. So let's do that next.